So today's vlog, in its entirety, is going to be devoted to my trip to New Hampshire that I took earlier this summer. And the reason for this is I didn't have a lot to talk about today, and I have all this unused footage that I really wanted to make into a video. So one thing to keep in mind about this trip was it was the first trip that my family had taken since coronavirus started, and we took it the first week of July. So it was pretty far into quarantine. Things are starting to open up a little more. Not as much as they are now, but things are starting to open up a little more, and we were getting pretty stir crazy, so we decided to go on this trip to New Hampshire. We packed up our stuff and headed out. Alright guys, we haven't left for New Hampshire yet. We're still in Arlington, but we're getting smoothies, which is pretty hype. So when we got to New Hampshire, the plan was to stay in this little cabin, which was really cute and in the woods, around Lake Ossipee. And on our first day, we ventured down to Lake Ossipee to go swimming, and it was such a beautiful lake. There were just incredible views, and it was an incredible place to swim. So to give a little context, one thing you need to know about my family is that we love to hike, and we're super outdoorsy people, and we love to get outside and exercise and be in nature and do all that. So a big part of this trip was going on all these hikes, and the first one we went on was just a little hike. I think I have some footage from that right here. And it was super chill. It was just like a little hike. It was really nice to just kind of get out in nature, but what we were really excited for was the big hike that we were gonna do on our third day in New Hampshire. We decided to do this hike called Castle in the Clouds, and we expected it to be about a 4 to 5 mile hike round trip. So basically 2 miles up and then 2 miles down. We started hiking up the mountain, and it was pretty steep, pretty rocky, but going up the mountain, this was a pretty steep trail, so we were just making our way up the mountain, and I remember just like walking up it. As I walked up the mountain, you couldn't really see anywhere around you. You couldn't see how high up you were because the trees were just kind of blocking everything. And I remember we got to our first peak, and I could not believe it.
He was a terrific guy. Exactly the person he thought he was.
After we had been hiking for only like an hour, we had already gotten to this huge viewpoint of Lake Winnipesaukee, and this was just an incredible view. As we climbed up the mountain, it started getting higher and higher, but once again, you couldn't really see how high up you were because of the tree covering, and it was so cool to just kind of be in the thick of the woods and the rock, and just not knowing how high up you were or what it really looked like until you got to the peak. So that was super exciting for me. And so once we got to the top of the mountain, the view was awesome. Basically, you could see the clouds rolling in, hence the name Castle in the Clouds.
Maybe I'm selfish.
Me, my sister, and my cousin decided to go ahead. So we got to the top first, and when we were up there, we met these people who had been doing a longer hike, and they told us of this different way we could go down the mountain that would be less steep and probably take a shorter amount of time, but it would be a little bit longer distance, so maybe 3 or 4 miles instead of the 2 miles down the mountain. So after my parents and my aunt got to the top of the mountain and we just kind of hung around, we reluctantly decided to take the longer route down the mountain. I say reluctantly because we didn't really know how long it was going to be. We knew that it was going to be longer than the 2 miles down would have been if we just had turned around there, but we weren't exactly sure if it was going to be 3 miles or 5 miles or 7 miles. Like, we weren't 100% sure. We had never done this trail, so we reluctantly trusted the people that told us it wasn't too far. And with that, we started making our way down the mountain, and the views were amazing. You could still see the clouds kind of rolling in through the mountain, and it was just a cool sight to see that we were so high up, and you could just see all the other mountains in the distance.
You can leave now.
After about an hour and a half, we started to wonder why it was taking so long. It still looked like we were pretty far from the bottom of the mountain. Despite it being a lot longer than we had hoped, we bit the bullet. We made our way down the mountain, even though it took about 4.5 hours. To hike this mountain that was called Castle in the Clouds and really experience the clouds rolling through while we were hiking was such a cool experience, and one of my favorite things I did this entire summer. So the next day after the hike, we woke up, and man, were we sore. We slept in that whole day. We didn't really want to do anything because we were just exhausted. And that night was July 3rd, and because it was almost the 4th of July, we got a bunch of sparklers and we had some fun with them. And it was a really great time and a really good way to end this awesome trip.
He was a terrific guy.